Now, once again, I remind you, working on no. I think we go back to the system. Sorry about this. All right. Working with these patterns, the extraordinary channels, first of all, keep in mind it's a chronic condition. It's a recurring condition. In general, tomorrow I'll be mentioning it for head pathology, it's the same thing. We do not use extraordinary channels for acute conditions. For example, he's taking care. I'm going on, I think it's maybe the two mics are synchronized on the same frequency. So somehow I don't know why they cannot change it. Yeah. For example, you lose a person, you lose a parent, you go into sadness and depression. We're not going to think extraordinary channels. But when it's a recurrent condition, the person has a habitual way of doing the same pattern, then we try and dig deeper and go to the roots of the problem. So here I'm giving some indication of points. This is yeah, it's the same person. He's running up and down, so he's trying to fix it. Yes. I send them to I send them to Kevin, and he promised that he'll put it online. Or I don't know where you have something that you can download. So going back, when we work on the extraordinary, it's not just doing a few points, obviously. There has to be some psychological support. Let's go back to the system we had before. Can we stop both mics?
It's not mics, the hotel PA system.
So everybody's hearing this?
No, it's only that room is broadcasting to these speakers. It's their system, we don't know where you turn it off at.
Okay, so let's go back to what we did before.
You can carry on wearing that, because that's not causing a problem. It's the mic next door.
Coming through the room?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, you can keep that on.
Modern technology.
Can they do what they did last time?
I have no idea. Anyway, so some pointers I've given here, and they have to do with the different branches, of course, of the Chongmei. For example, lack of grounding is people, as I mentioned before, they don't have a central axis, which means they easily get off track, they easily get affected. So this is the descending branch, kidney 11, kidney 10, kidney 3 helps for the grounding. Loss of kidney and heart communication mainly manifests with insomnia. And here, obviously, all the points on the chest the kidney points on the chest are super important. These are points which were sort of dropped and neglected in modern acupuncture because obviously for prudish reasons, the Chinese were not very keen on needling the chest areas, so they concentrated on distal points. And they are fabulous points. I use them a lot. And they're really, you can see, it's the combination of the kidney channel water, which comes to the fire zone and balances the balance between fire and water. The lack of nourishment compensations is a very interesting concept. I have worked a little with that. And for example, we're going to see it with Renmei also. We address pathologies of related to food allergies, food compensations, and things like that. It's an interesting concept. And usually what we do is combine either the Chong or the Ren channel and with these points. Can't we do what we did before?
Just trying to sort it. It's the hotel speakers.
Just turn it off, I'll speak louder. No problem. I have enough zongqi, so I can shout if necessary. Okay, let's move to the Renmei, the conception vessel. And this is, in psychological terms, is the vessel of bonding. The mother and child, mother takes the child on her chest, so that the two Ren are bonding. And the child learns this bonding process at in this first stage of their life. And basically, it works. According to Jeffrey Ewan, the Ren has 3 different sections. The lower points or section deal with group consciousness. And that's very interesting because it's not only group, it's gender also, and form. So people who have issues with form, gender, or group usually will look at the lower points of the Renmei. The middle section deals with nourishment, food. So as I mentioned before, all kinds of food allergies and intolerances, also anorexia. You can see that in anorexia we have 2 concepts. One concept is lack of relation to the self. You know, I don't know if you've had anorexic patients. What they say is, I'm too fat. It's amazing. You look at this person who's just skin and bones. Don't you see I've put on weight? Where? So they have a relation to the self which is distorted. And they starve themselves. But this is actually very interesting. We'll see it's one of the issues of Ren. And then also the food compensations that we're going to look at. And then the other aspect of Ren, so we saw the bonding, the group consciousness, and then learning of control. Ren is about the mouth and the digestive tract, the anus and the genitals. So the child has to learn to control the sphincter muscles. So when there are issues with over control or under control, there's a compensation that can take place. For example, a child can refuse the milk. Many times we have what they call the celiac disease, or we have this stenosis of the pylorus in children who vomit the milk. And it's amazing because in medicine, of course, you have to operate and you have to dilate this pylorus and all that. In Russia, they did an experiment on children who were vomiting the milk, in a way they are refusing to live. They're refusing nourishment from the mother. They asked the mother to speak to the baby, to tell the baby that she's very happy to. And when they analyzed, most of these mothers at one stage of their pregnancy had not been happy about being pregnant. Maybe because they had already too many children. Maybe it was like a one-night stand and she got pregnant and she had no sense to have this child, or maybe it was whatever reason. Or maybe the mother had some psychological issues. The child feels unwanted. So they had mothers speak to children and tell them how much they loved them and how much they were happy to have them, etc. You know that out of 10 diagnosed stenosis of pillar, there were only 3 that needed to be operated. 7 spontaneously started accepting the milk. So when we talk about a medical diagnosis, stenosis of pylorus, it's just the surface. I'm always debating that. Our physical cause and effect medicine has a deeper cause, which is a psycho-emotional pattern. And even that has a deeper cause. It's where we have come from. That's the whole idea of digging deeper. And remember, I always mention this, that many times we don't go deep enough. We stop at the cause and effect and put it, I got cancer because I was smoking. That's normal. And we don't go deeper. Is there another cause? I'm sure many people here have experienced that cancer, yes, it happens, but it doesn't happen any moment. It doesn't happen at random. It happens at a significant moment. And this, I'm speaking out of personal experience. It's not theory. So really, it's important to dig deeper. Sometimes we don't, because first of all, we don't know how to. We have to know. If you want to help somebody, you have to have gone through it. Not that we all have to get cancer so we can treat cancer patients. But at least we have to know how to go into the dark spaces to help people and bring them out. If not, stay on the blood and chi level. That's okay. Not everybody, so you treat sprained ankles. You don't have to psychoanalyze a person because they sprained their ankle. You see what I mean? People come to us, they have chosen us as a therapist. We do the best we can. I don't say, oh my God, I know that I have to go deeper, but I don't know how to, etc. Yeah, you have to. If I manage to experience it for myself, then I can help other people to see it also. But not everybody is ready to see also. Many people come, I have patients that come, listen, take this symptom away, but don't tell me it's my own fault. They say it because somebody else told them, hey, you're doing it to yourself. I don't want to hear that. Just take it away. And if you don't, I go to a doctor who gives me the pill that takes the pain away. I don't want to be responsible for my pain. Okay. Honor this, and it's very important in our role that we give to patients what we can give and not give them. Originally, when I started, I had all these theories, and the patients would ask me, why do I have this? And you give them what you think is the answer. And they go away feeling terrible. They came with a pain, and now they go with a load of guilt on top of it. So it's not a good idea. You have to see if the patient is authentic. Some people ask questions just to be interesting. They don't want to hear the answer. And when there is an authentic search, then now you can work with that. You give people exercises to do. Did they do it in between? Because a lot of this, you have to change we have to change our belief systems. We have to change the way we perceive the world. And that means constantly catching ourselves doing the old thing again and again. And a lot of these patterns we have grown, they are part of our ego structure. And sometimes it's interesting how we say some for example, harmful patterns are part of the ego structure, which is logical to get rid of. But do you know how many of these harmful structures we are attached to? We want to keep them. Many of us get sick. Why? Because when we got sick as kids, that was the time parents spent time with us. They took more care of us. Imagine? Now, if that is already rooted, I get sick because I want attention. So there's no therapy or treatment is going to take that away unless I realize that I have to give myself the love. That's where bladder 43 becomes important. Self-love. So the aspect of Renmei, so it's either the bonding can be excessive or insufficient. Excessive bonding is mothers who never let go of the child, always carry the child on them. And of course, there is a codependency that sets in. And these people have a tendency to become victimized in relationships. A lot of addictions, obviously. Attachment to the mother, then they just transfer this image to the partner or another person. They are the most dangerous ones in therapy. Easily they transfer this attachment to the therapist. Like when you see they call you at 11 at night, you saved me. That's one of the things they use a lot. It's a trap for the therapist. You saved me and you feel so good. It's a trap. Don't fall into it. You did it yourself. So lack of bonding, it's mother was sick. Maybe for some reason the child was put in an incubator, premature birth. For some reason the mother couldn't take care. Maybe the mother died. Maybe it was a child left for adoption. So lack of bonding, there is this feeling of this feeling of emptiness. And it's very interesting because there is a lack of faith and trust in these people. And Jeffrey relates the points of the Renmei in the chest area to this. He relates the points which are trust in God, trust in some higher form of energy or whatever. It relates to the points of Renmei in the chest area. Then there is the, obviously, when we feel empty, we compensate, and the compensations take three forms. The Chinese refer to them as ghosts. So they have the hungry ghost, they have the sexual ghost, we call them the horny ghost, or the wandering ghost. And they relate to a hungry ghost is like people who feel they never have enough. I need more. They just don't feel secure. These are people who hoard things also. And then there is, of course, the sexual ghost is people who they cannot be satisfied in sexual relations. They need many partners and all that. And then the wandering ghost is basically their emotional needs are not satisfied. Also, the early weaning or toilet training can have influenced this stage of the bonding stage of the Renmei. I mentioned before with the food intolerance, anorexia, orthorexia. I love this word. It's a modern word. Do you know what it is? Exactly. We knew about anorexia, but orthorexia is people who are obsessed with, is this food biological? Does it have gluten? Does it have lactose? Does it have this? I'm gluten allergic. Out of 20 people who are gluten allergic, only 2 really have allergies. 18 have orthorexia. I have a sister-in-law who is allergic to gluten, to lactose, to everything. And then she was coming to us, and I cooked a Persian meal, and I made a Persian dessert. She said, is there any lactose or gluten? I said, nothing. She ate it. She said, this is so wonderful. What is the recipe? White flour and milk. I didn't tell her. She had no reaction whatsoever. Otherwise, when she eats, oh, she gets this and she gets that. This is orthorexia. And a lot of the food intolerances that we see today, of course, the food is different. Of course, the jing is different. The milk is not anymore the same milk that our grandparents had. You know, when you see the state of the cows, which are all in a barn, and they don't even see grass, and they don't see anything out, and that milk cannot be a natural. Or all the wheat that is grown with fertilizers and with all kinds of pesticides, it's not the same jing. I accept that. But still, we have to adapt. If we want to survive, we have to adapt. Dinosaurs died because they did not adapt. So as a human race, we have to adapt to change. It doesn't matter, we grow fingers, we grow gills maybe, become green. So, but that's the sort of the trick to survive. Now, with the food intolerances, we have good results by regulating these points which are in the middle triple warmer. A lot of them are dealing with digestive issues. Of course, REN 12 everybody knows, but REN 10, REN 11, REN 13, which deals with the upper triple warmer and especially the stomach. All of these points, I find them excellent in dealing with that. And then, of course, identity, issues of identity. Today, a lot of people are seeking their identity. This transgender, like when you are not sure what is your gender, you want to be something else, you're in the wrong skin. That is a very interesting concept. And don't mistake me, I'm not saying it's a pathology, but it's a discomfort for the patient. They are not comfortable with it. So these are issues with REN and the lower abdomen. One thing I would say, I think we pass on after this, or have I given points? Yeah. Okay, I've given some directives and points. For example, for a lot of the compensation issues, of course, RENMA 12 is a central point. Always think of it. The Huang points, depending on the type of compensation. Identity issues, the RENMA 2 all the way to RENMA 8, all of the points. When there's a flesh, it means all the points can be involved. Control issues, RENMA 8 to RENMA 15. And lack of faith and trust is RENMA 15 to RENMA 24, reminding that there are very important RENMA points here. RENMA 17, of course, you know, but 18 is the not point of Qi, and RENMA 23 is the not point of Shaoyin. That means the energy of Shaoyin concentrates here, so heart and kidney, they communicate in this point. So these are important points. But in general, RENMA is considered the sea of yin. And I think, like most of you, when you have a yin deficiency, one thinks of the sea of yin first. For years, I needled the opening point of sea of yin, lung 7. And I never got any results. So a sea of yin, you needle this point, you should increase the yin. In menopause, for example. Yin deficiency in menopause is standard. Lung 7 is given in many textbooks. I never got a response. Finally, I dropped it, and I was using RENMA points, which are famous for strengthening the yin REN 4, even one has the name Yin Jiao, REN 7, crossing of the yin. So these are very powerful yin points. I just use local yin points. Years later, I was in a lecture, I think it was in, I don't remember if it was not in Rothenburg, and there was this Chinese lecturer from Holland, I forget his name. And it was a roundtable debate, and he stood up and started talking about lung 7. It's a fallacy, it doesn't work, and this and that. And he was really very passionate about it. And I raised my hand, I said, thank you. This was the first time I was hearing another person come to the same conclusion. So what is lung 7 about? It's about opening the renmei in this context, not about strengthening the yin. It's about precisely opening the bonding channel, the conception channel to open up issues like this. Plus, lung 7 has a very interesting property. We know that from the 8 extraordinary channels, 4 of the opening points are low points. And maybe you're not familiar with the concept of low in relation to emotions, but I use it a lot. I find that low are super important in management of emotional issues. And lung 7, which has a pathway different from all the other low that flow, I'm talking about the longitudinal pathway, not the horizontal pathway. They all flow inwards, except for lung 7 that also goes to the hand. And gallbladder 37 goes to the foot. But in lung 7, what does that signify? What does the hand here signify? To let go. To let go, and I use it a lot in pathologies where people have difficulty to let go of things, and including, of course, many ghosts. A lot of ghosts, you have to let go of them. And we help them become, when it's possible, become conscious of what the ghost is. Obviously, if it's an early trauma, your mother during her pregnancy, the child does not have a conscious memory. The ghost is hidden. So you just have to clear it out through the body. Did I mention the limbic system in a child is not yet fully developed until the age of 5, 6. So the conscious memories are not registered in the limbic system. So where are they registered? In the body. For example, I have treated people who have had an operation after birth, like a child that has a heart septal defect has to be operated right away, otherwise they die. So this baby at the age of 6, 7 months has been operated, has this huge scar. They have no conscious memory of that, but the body has. And a lot of the symptoms they present are these defense mechanisms that the body has kept. And to free it up, we have a procedure to do that. We are using, obviously, not only the extraordinary channels, but we are especially also using the Po. Remember the Po, which registers memory in the body to help release that. And there's a whole procedure, and the body armors. Because the Jingjin, the sinew channels, are not just responsible for our muscular movements, they're also protecting. And in terms of protection, they are going to protect against physical aggression. And if this physical aggression has occurred at an age where we have no memory, the memory is blocked completely in the Jingjin system, in the body, what we call body armors. The terminology is not Chinese, it's borrowed from Reich, who worked with the concept of orgone energy, but the concept is totally superposable. It's a pity the Chinese did not give it a name. I discovered when I was doing martial arts that the Mongolians had a technique of releasing fear from the body. And it's called churka. And the warriors, they would release fear. They said that the fear is blocking, is sort of trapped in the muscles in the form of bubbles. and they had a stick, and they would work a deep work on the muscles to release these bubbles, because they said during stress, during like a combat, these will block the movements to release them before. Have you heard of bioenergetics? Rolfing? The idea is totally the same. Except here we have put it into a psychological thing. And if you have done bioenergetic work or Rolfing, anybody has experienced that? When you go deep into the muscles, what happens? All of a sudden this emotion is released and you don't have an idea where it's coming from. It can be crying, it can be anger, it can be all kinds of stuff. You have no idea. Maybe you're lying there on the table and the masseur is massaging, and all of a sudden you want to scream, shout, cry, or whatever. An emotion is released. So obviously we have a lot of holding patterns, and the jing, the sinew channels can help release that. Now when we are working with old trauma, we have to join all of these methods. Obviously, a trauma has the impact on the sinews, it has an impact on the hun, that means the memory system, that means maybe some words, colors. For example, you might have kept, I remember as a child, I would get, when I had a nightmare, I would always be dreaming of a full moon. I had no idea why I had a dream of a full moon. When I would have nightmares when I had fever, for example. It took me years and years, and then during a therapy session, all of a sudden it came to me why I was dreaming of this full moon. Why was the full moon scary that time? So we have these images or words. You hear some words and they have an impact on you, which normally it's just a word. Or a color. Some visual stimulations might have impacts. And these are usually found in this sort of repressed emotional patterns. Now, do develops after the REN. The REN is the first, we can say the first year of our life, the bonding process, where we learn to bond, we learn to control sphincters, and also we take possession of our identity. Do is the channel of individuality. The child at one stage has to maintain its head, and then it has to lift its trunk up. This lifting produces the curvature in the lumbar area in preparation for the vertical stance, and then the altered movement of walking on the feet. So this is a whole process, and Du is the organizer of Yang, but it also is the very important relation to the brain and the different parts of the brain. So in working with psychology, and also tomorrow we'll see working with head pathologies, Du is probably one of the most important channels. In our development, it's the channel of individuality. It's a channel that defines who I am and owning it. And obviously interaction with the world, because the Du comes to the brain, the sea of marrow. It even has a branch that goes through the brain intimately, so it has a very intense connection with the brain. It's also the channel of what I'm capable of. Now, if we look at generally the mental functions, I mean, this is quite known. We have the Shen, Qi, and Jing, the three treasures. And all three get the fire energy from the source that we saw before the break. Kidney fire producing the kidney qi that is spread through the Du and is going to define what we call the sexual fire, the digestive fire, and the heart fire. The heart fire, remember the tradition says that heart has two residences. The emperor has two residences. You remember? The earthly residence and the heavenly residence. What does that signify? That means that earthly residence of the emperor is our worldly life. And the heavenly residence is our spiritual life. That we need the emperor to live in the body for a period of time, but at one stage, one has to move to the heavenly palace. That means our life interests have to shift from the world to the spiritual. And this is the very important transformational stage in our life as full human beings. So obviously, many people have this difficulty of shifting. You can see refusal to age, refusal to get old, refusal to see the wrinkles, the white hair, and the loss of capacity. So for each of these, we have found, Viagra to replace the kidney fire, and then for the digestion, we find all kinds of other tricks. And for the heart, basically, we manage to keep ourselves involved in the world and difficulty to actually withdraw from it. In the Eastern tradition, there were people who went into the caves or in the jungle. They retired. After retirement from work, they also retired from the world to go to a thing. Here in the West, it's lost. We don't have that much. So the Du is responsible for protecting, in a sense, these three treasures, and we'll see. And also in the brain, the three sections of the brain, the forebrain, midbrain, and primitive brain. The primitive brain is the brain that controls, the heartbeat and breathing and digestion. It's basically survival. And then the fourth brain, which has developed greatly in humans, is the frontal cortex, where we have all the voluntary acts, and we have the differentiation, the logic, etc., etc. What is very scary is, I don't know if you've come across, there is this neurological disease where the frontal brain starts melting away. It's not Alzheimer's. Alzheimer's is the whole brain is shrinking. It's only the frontal brain. So first of all, what happens, it happened to two of my, one colleague and another friend, and it's very scary because the first thing, the forebrain is also about adaptive behavior. That means preventing us from doing things which are improper. For example, you feel like having a pee, you just don't do it. Like the dog next to the tree, you hold yourself and you go. Or you don't say certain things, even if you think them. First thing happens is these people lose that adaptive behavior and start becoming rude and saying things, and it's very shocking, and they don't care anymore. And then they start doing things where it shows that they don't care. Maybe we go out naked on the balcony, and then later in the street, or they feel hot, they undress. It's like, very spontaneous. And then after that, of course, they start losing all the learned things. They don't know how to eat, they don't know how to dress, somebody has to feed them, etc. It's a terrible disease, and it's becoming more common, obviously. Diseases of Jing are becoming more common. If we have time, I'll elaborate on that. Anyway, the midbrain is very interesting because that all the limbic area where we believe that is the site of our emotional brain and imagery. This is an area which is very active during dreaming. And obviously, during dreaming, one of the functions of dreaming is to release a lot of retained emotions. I did a lecture here on dreams, I believe, but not on sleep, but not insomnia, but not on dreams. But that is a fascinating area. I find it very fascinating because the Taoists have a whole concept about dreaming also. Anyway, here, Today, it's less obvious because a lot of work is being done trying to pinpoint the origin of each emotion. And there are different areas in the brain that are responsible for such and such an emotion, but not only the midbrain. So it's a bit more difficult to say, but majority of our memory system is actually connected to this area of the brain. And something we're going to be talking about, yin wei, later. Yin wei, which is the next group, the next ancestry. Yin and yang wei are responsible for development, internal and external development. And what is very interesting, they did a study, I don't know if, I think in Australia, they were needling pericardium 6, the key opening point of yin wei, neg1. And the scan was showing that there was a response in the limbic area of the brain when this point was needled. So it's very interesting because this point is given in this context to help people bring out memories. So it's very interesting that the Western research is actually consolidating the Chinese concepts. So the do is responsible for the 3 sections of the brain. And basically, issues with do have to do either because the father is, when the do is weak, the father has often been absent. Either the father is not there, or the mother is a single mother, or whatever, or the mother has been mothering excessively. It's like too much mothering. The image of the male father is absent. And this both for boys and girls, but more specifically for boys. And there is a lot of dependency and lack of character. We say people who are also depressive and easily forgetful, etc. I think probably the most obvious case I had was a woman called to make an appointment for, in French we say, mon petit garçon, my little boy. Okay, on the phone I made an appointment, and comes in this big woman and this guy who is 50-something years old with a beard and all that. And he doesn't look like the husband, but he certainly doesn't look like mon petit garçon. So I asked her, you know, you made an appointment? Oh, yeah, that's him. So I say, please come in to the therapy room. She comes in too. I said, you can wait outside in the waiting room. No, there's a lot of information I have to give. And believe it or not, I would ask him and she would answer. And it was a case, I mean, it was like almost a caricature of somebody. And of course, she was a single woman. She had had a short relation with a man who had left her. So she had given birth alone. She had raised this child alone, and she had over-mothered this boy. The boy was a baby. He was still maybe, 8, 9 years old. And he was lost in life, and he couldn't, he did not have a mental incapacity. He had a deep psychological, he couldn't work, so he had to work in a special, where they have handicapped people working. He was working there, and he was totally lost. And obviously here I had to really boost his doom as much as possible. But what can you do when he was living with mommy? The first thing he had to do was leave her and live alone. But that was, you don't touch issues like that. So excessive stimulation of do can do the opposite. And we see it a lot in children now because of inadapted games. Parents, they find it very practical. Now you go into any restaurant, when you have kids, Each of them has their little tablet. They're playing, and they keep quiet. Those who don't have, they're climbing on the table, screaming, shouting. They want this, they want that. These kids are quiet. I was shocked when I was visiting my sister in the US. Each of the boys had a TV in their room. They had a TV in the family room. They had a huge screen TV in the dining room. And then each kid had their TV in their room. I said, what is this? They said, you know, they watch their films and they leave me in peace. Otherwise, two boys there, yeah, it's a way of facility, but it has its consequences. And these games, have you seen the games? Have you played them? My God, the first time we got a computer, we got one of these games where you had to shoot down these attacking extraterrestrials. And I swear I would stand up, my shoulders were like this. I had released so much adrenaline in the body, I could feel like I was like that. I mean, it's a game. It's really is really counterproductive. So this is going to, of course, in small children, overstimulate the do, and obviously hyperactivity is one of the consequences. It also can be from excessive demands when the parents, or especially the father, is demanding too much of a child, that has to be this, has to be that, especially young boys, that a father who is very authoritarian, a typical Thai young father who wants the child to be like this. And sometimes the kid wants to play, and you have to do this, you have to do that. So that can also cause overstimulation. Now, in both cases, the consequences, long-term consequences, spinal problems, obviously neurological conditions, and I have my theories about amnesia, which this is not the time, but I have my ideas about why we are having so much more amnesia in the general population. But it's not new. I mean, we have always been. There is part of aging is also the deterioration of the sea of marrow, the brain. Part of it is amnesia. But the way we deal with it is different. In China, I remember I had followed a lecture given by this man who had spent many years living in villages in China. So he was actually giving his own experience. It was very interesting how, the popular Chinese, they had their ways. Diet, for example, was natural. The grandmother knew what food you should eat when you had your period, what food you should eat when you were pregnant, after pregnancy, etc. Or they were doing gua sha or cupping, which was also a very popular thing. And the way they treated the old people was fabulous. The old people were part of the family. Here we park them in houses and wish for them to die faster because it's costing. And then we have to go visit them and they don't even recognize us anymore. This was not. And when the old grandfather or grandmother was starting to lose the mind and forget the names, fondly they would say, oh, he's just letting go of unnecessary information. It's so beautiful. Letting go, yeah, what do we need all this information? I'm going to remember all these names when I die. Up there, who cares? So this is a different way, and therefore, it's not considered a pathology. Here, we make a big deal out of it, obviously. But I have treated, of course, many Alzheimer or amnesic conditions with age, the deterioration of the brain, and I have used the two concepts. One is, I think I've given points here. Yeah. So one concept is the sea of marrow. And the sea of marrow, you have have I given the points? No, Dume 16, 17, and 20 are points which are given in the classics as sea of marrow to help the brain. Otherwise, just a Dumay channel and working. Like a weak personality, obviously, we are going to do the main do points to open the do, but then especially Dumay 4 and 14, which are very strong yang points. Dumay 20, obviously. And then why bladder 11 and gallbladder 39? Any idea? The Hui of bones and the Hui of marrow. So in a sense, symbolically, you're strengthening the skeleton. You know, if you say somebody who doesn't have a strong character, we say they're spineless. So symbolically, the idea is to strengthen the spine on a psychological aspect. Domain 4 and domain 9 have been offered to make choices. People have difficulty making choices or have to make choices. Domain 9, Ji Yang, where the yang of the back gathers. Depression, Domain 10, and introspection, Domain 11. Both of these points classically were forbidden to needle in the old text. Not in the modern text, but in the old text, they were forbidden to needle. And the reason being is that these were points that were believed you had to develop yourself from inside. These are, for example, like the third eye. You don't open the third eye by needling it. We have patients who come, can you open my third eye with needles? No, sorry. It opens from inside. So this is the same. The Shen and this is a link point, link tie, the tower of the link. And it's very interesting because what is a tower for? In older days, it was to see the enemy coming. And in the body, this point in martial arts was developed internally so that the martial artist could feel the danger before it arrived. You know, there's all these stories about this disciple, a martial art disciple who's training and now he's really reached a high level. And then they used to live with the master. And the master in the night, he would come while the guy was asleep and hit him with a stick. So that he developed the sense of danger, and the next time the master came to hit him, he would be up and defending himself. So this is the link tie.
Which point was it, sorry?
Dumei 10. The other one is Shen Tao, the path of Shen. So this point is very interesting to develop. So for a while, as I was doing martial arts, I thought I'd use it. In those days, I was getting a lot of speeding tickets. So I said, I'll develop this so I can detect where they are waiting for me. It didn't work. Now, opposite, when the personality is too dominant, overbearing, this is very often we get it with insensitive Tai-Yang personality. Tai-Yang personality is the upper level Yang. When they don't communicate with Shaolin, they lose their empathy and sensitivity. They can become very hard and domineering. And interestingly, triple warmer 10 is given. It's the sedation point of triple warmer, which is a fire point. But it's very surprising, this point. I never could really explain it. Obviously, we have points like bladder 52, which we sedate so that the person is less willful. But the triple warmer 10 is given in the classics. Okay, the sea of marrow I mentioned, and obviously calming the mind, domain 19 and 24 are indicated. Now, in dealing with traumatic events, suppressed traumatic events, I find Daime is one of the most fabulous channels. The belt channel symbolizes what we have stuffed under the carpet. Things that we have put in the closet. We say the skeleton in the closet. Or stuffed it in the basement. Because at the time it happened, we could not deal with it. Now, generally speaking, the main issue with DAE is sexual abuse. Of course, we have toilet training. Of course, we have other things to do with gender or whatever. But when you know, statistically, I was shocked to find out how many children are sexually abused. Boys and girls. And now it's coming out. Now they're talking about it. Priests in preschools, the schools where there were priests running the school, have been abusing boys. Little girls are abused regularly. Incest, often it's incest, often it's in the close family members. And these are small children at the time, especially in case of incest, because it's the father, there is a lot of mixed emotions. You love this man, who's your father, and yet it's doing something for you doesn't make sense. And it has an impact on the jinn, which is very detrimental. And I've spoken with therapists who work a lot with this because the jinn can be really damaged. And later, all kinds of pathologies can come out of it. I spoke with some therapists who are working, and she mentioned especially one woman. She mentioned that the only way that she has found that the jinn can be fortified again is Qigong. Acupuncture, herbs, whatever, doesn't work on that level. Qigong goes deep enough to work. And I asked one time Jeffrey which type of Qigong, and he gave us a whole course. It's called the marrow washing Qigong. Yeah, marrow washing Qigong, which is a deep Qigong, which actually pulls out the trauma which is deep inside and strengthens the jinn. So we did one-day course with him, and we filmed it and all that, but I don't know if it's available on the media, but we didn't, it's complicated to film it and then put DVDs and make the DVD and distribute. So it stayed there at that level. But anyway, marrow washing Qigong can help. But what is the Daime? It's what I couldn't handle and I pushed in. And when we have emotional issues, how do we hold on to them? We need something very thick to hold it. It's either jing, which you can find in joints, big joints, for example, or it's phlegm, dampness and phlegm. This is why we say that diet deals with dampness. And a lot of times you find people who have recurrent dampness or damp heat or damp phlegm in the lower jaw. This can be in the genital system, it can be in the urinary system, it can be in the intestines, or in the joints, or even just on the skin, like cellulitis. A lot of cellulitis around this area. I had a patient who had, she was skinny, but she had a lot of cellulitis in this area, and she had done this vacuum system. And then the guy, he said, I've never seen, because where he had vacuumed, it had taken the fat, but next to it, it had stayed. So instead of having cellulitis, she had all these horrible lumps. And he says, I don't know, I've never seen such resistant cellulitis. So she came for acupuncture. And then, after a few sessions, started talking. And finally, I sort of slowly went there, because you don't jump, oh, have you been raped? The first session. You have to let the person come and, slowly open the door. And she said she was raped when she was a little girl, 5, 6 years old. playing in the garden. One worker was going by, and he took her and he said, if you say anything, I'll kill you. So he raped her in the thing, and she was scared to tell her parents, and she kept it all this time. And obviously she was, so, after that she did a lot of also therapy and psychological work to get release that. But Daime, and then I had, most interesting, a patient who was complaining, amongst other things. One thing was she was not connected to her lower belly. It was like it was not hers. And this is typical Daime. And in a session, I was treating for something else, and then I did a Daime treatment. Put the needles, went out, came back, she was crying. I said, what's going on? She said, I don't know. I had these images coming and all that. I think my father abused me when I was small. She had blocked memory before the age of 8. She couldn't remember anything. Obviously, it was a deep thing. So she went back. She was German. She went back to Germany. And I saw her a few months later. She said, I confronted my father. He denied. He said categorically, you're crazy and all that. Then she went and spoke to her sister. She had a younger sister who confirmed it. She said, yeah, he did it to me too. So you see, it's amazing. It brings out, so be careful when you work with Daime and you have suspicions. It might release things. Make sure the person is prepared for it, to deal with it. Some people, it can be too much. They cannot handle it, and they either blow their minds or even go further. So be careful. They put it under the carpet for a reason. I've had some really incredible stories with the Daime, and especially incredible also reactions and results coming out of it. Fortunately, we don't have time too much to talk about. So, as I said, feeling disconnected, lack of creative energy. Remember that the lower chakra is about creation. And this creative energy is not just making babies. It's also creating myself, creating life, and artistic creation. These people very often lack in artistic creation. And complete feeling scattered. Obviously, your energy is, your main energy is blocked, so you don't have enough to finish things. Now, what often people forget, that Daime has been described having 3 belts and not 1. The main belt, gallbladder 26, Renmei 8. But 2 other belts, one going through 27 and one going through 28. And they're very interesting. I use them a lot. One of the other things that all the extraordinary channels deal with is lumbar pains. They are all rooted in the kidney energy, and this is the house of kidneys, so they will all have some type of lumbar pain, which are different. Of course, this is, again, not the time to talk about that, but it's very interesting. Sometimes you find people complaining of these horizontal pains, and very often which move to the front, which radiate to the front. And here we have bladder 24 and 26, which are connected with the second and the third branch of Daime. Okay. So Yin Wei. Now we're getting to Yin Wei, Yang Wei, Yin Chao, Yang Chao, and these last 4 deal with time and space, which means that they're going to be very much in relation to the rhythmic changes that we go through in life. We call it, let's call it the aging process. Yin Wei relates to memory, thinking of the past, and especially how we were in the past. People who are blocked in an image of themselves in the past. You see that sometimes you walk down the street and you have this elderly lady who is maybe 70-something and who's dressed up like a bimbo. Short skirt, high heel shoes, makeup like that, and then colored hair and bling, bling, blang, blang. It's not your age anymore. But she sees herself as the time when she was 20. She's stuck in that period. She often is thinking of the past. It's people who cannot move on. They're stuck in the past. And obviously, a lot of our beliefs, the belief systems that we have built are based on experiences that we have had. And we stick with those belief systems. It's always, we say in life, most of us, what we do, we reach a river to cross and we build a boat, allows us to cross the river, and then we carry the boat. It helps us one day. Maybe in the future it will be useful. And then you're crossing the desert with a boat on your back. And this symbolically is what we do often with beliefs that at one stage helped, but not anymore. They're not helpful. Avoidance of the present. You live in the past. And obviously, you base your future on the past, because if you avoid the present, where are you going to live? Past is past, so then you start projecting on the future. You know, you're still waiting for Prince Charming to come down the street on his white horse and sweep you up. I had a friend who was like that, and one day, you know, he's waiting for this, and it was reverse. He was waiting the ideal woman, and he had painted this ideal woman who wasn't born yet. She didn't exist. And one time he was talking about this. I said, please get up, come here. He said, what? I said, just do as I say. Look at yourself in the mirror. A 20-year-old, beautiful, intelligent, cultivated woman, why would she come with you, old fart? And she must have deep psychological issues. And look at yourself. I mean, be reasonable. Be who you are and be reasonable. But these are people have difficulty. Either they have been stuck in the past or they're always projecting the future. They cannot live in the moment, which means also they miss life. Somatization is another issue, which of course a lot of these conditions may bring somatization, like typically psychosomatic diseases. Tradition says the yin way has 9 types of heart pain. You've seen that in the books. They say 9 types of heart pain. And they subdivided the pain in the heart can be like a stitch, like a needle, or like a knife. And depending on the description, it relates to the 3 levels of the yin way. But 9, actually, we are not only talking about heart pathology. We are talking about psychological heart pains. And one thing I always say in heart pathology, real heart pathology, arteriosclerosis, basically embolism, whatever you have, heart conditions, palpitation, irregular rhythms, forget the heart channel. Leave the heart channel alone. It was never used. It's the pericardium channel. And on the pericardium channel, the main point is pericard 6, which at the same time is opening the yin way. So keep that in mind. It's a low point. We have, we saw that low points deal with blood and blood circulation as well. And especially, we have 2 low points that are very important for blood circulation. One is pericard 6, internal blood circulation, and one is heart 5, external blood circulation. For example, pathology of the heart, pericard 6. Pathology of, let's say, like Raynaud's, thank you. Wasn't coming. Raynaud's syndrome, heart 5, because it's external blood circulation. But anyway, that's low. Has nothing to do with extra, but it happens that it's the same point. And in this condition, of course, we are using the yin way when people cannot move on, etc. A lot of psychosomatic, like spasmophilia. Spasmophilia is a typical, have you had spasmophilic patients? Oh, they're hell to treat. Anything you do, they have, I'm dying. I had a colleague, homeopath. He sent me a patient. He said, listen, any homeopathic remedy I gave, the next day he was in the hospital saying, I'm having a heart attack. One time he came to the practice, I took a few drops of tap water, and I gave it to him. He had a massive, we had to call the ambulance. So I said, thank you for your gift. This was a patient, I explained to him that we were going to, well, you know, I'm very sensitive. I said, I'm doing a treatment that is, but you know, I had to sit there and hold his hand for 20 minutes, the time the needles were in. And then when he got up, oh, I think, no. I said, no, look, I'm taking your blood pressure, perfect. Look at your pulse, perfect. You're not having a heart attack. Just relax. They are difficult patients, and this type is related to the level Tsuyin. Tsuyin level, liver, pericardium. Pericard, we are talking about typical yin way pathology. I treated a lot with this level, harmonizing that level. And of course, sleep problems. Now, I have done already a lecture on sleep. Tomorrow I will mention a little bit more about sleep because it's pathology of the head. But basically I have a protocol of working with sleep, either considering the length or the depth. That means time or quality. In the quality of sleep, I look at the yin way and how deep people sleep. If you have superficial sleep, you do not recover. And people complain about waking up tired. If you wake up tired and you've had a full night's sleep, it's a matter of yin way. And if you have short sleep, maybe you wake up in the middle of the night, wide awake, etc., usually it's a matter of chao, yin or yang chao. We'll see that tomorrow. So here are some points. Thinking of the past, we were mentioning lung 7, to let go. But also kidney 24 is a burial of ling. It's a point people have difficulty burying the past. They hold on to old grudges, old stories. Heart 4 is another ling point. Ling soul points are very interesting to help along difficulties in psychological difficulties in life passages. There's a whole set of points given in the classics. They don't indicate when to use them. The name itself is indicative of that. Help to talk about an emotional pain, obviously, pericard 7. Renmei 17 is an excellent point. I have a therapist friend who had no notion of acupuncture, but when his patients had difficulty, he knew there was this emotion that was not coming out, he would hit them on the sternum. I said, why are you doing that? I've noticed it opens them up. I told him he was doing Renmei 17. And liver 14. Now, liver 14, I mean, I have another secret point I give you. It's kidney 21. Yaumen, the dark gate. Now, the books say it's called the dark gate because it's near the pylorus, which is the dark gate of the stomach. Okay, that's an anatomical explanation. But what is a dark gate? For me, it's a gate that goes to the basement, where we have hidden all kinds of stuff that wants to come out. both points are related to the liver, and the liver work is to bring the yin out. So it's a very interesting concept to help people bring out stuff, and with points like Heart 5, we help them to speak about it. It's a whole process. We don't do it in one session. You know, you feel that there is something, and then always when I treat people, I always make sure that they write down their dreams, because that's the first area which is unfiltered, and it will come out in dream form. And in dream form, they give it the image or the picture they want. They are creating the scenario of a dream. So it's not too fearful, they can handle it. If it's too fearful, they wake up, they say it was a nightmare. Still, very interesting. So make sure that and don't filter, don't push it back. It's okay. I have done this. Always tell people, I've done a treatment that is maybe going to bring out some old memories. Don't be scared. It's okay. We're going to deal with it. People are reassured, otherwise they freak out. They might freak out. So yang wei is the yang aspect. It also relates to time, and it relates to the yin wei was how I was in the past, and yang wei is the social status I had, the job I had. When I was the director of this company, and this and that, and now you want to be back in there. And this is a thing we see with a lot of people which are stuck in a status they had in the past. So obviously difficulty with transitions, difficulty to adapting to change, and in the text they give the symptoms of yang wei, sensitive to weather change. But psychologically, it's also change in general. And to external things, which means also criticism. It's people who have a lot of difficulty taking critique. They say, oh, you know, tell me what you think about me. And if you say it, they hate you. So criticism has to be wrapped up in a very soft tissue. And of course, again, sleep problems together with yin wei. So here are some points. They have given obsession about past events. They have given the point bladder 59, okay. It's she cleft of Chow, gallbladder 29, which is an interesting point. They say to cup this point. And triple warmer 10 that we saw before. Transition and change. One of the difficulties we have is dying people. Now, for dying people, to help them, lung 7 helps a lot, I find. The Taoists give bladder 60 as a point. Now, that is a very surprising point. You remember the name of the point? Kunlun. And what is Kunlun? It's a sacred mountain. And the Taoists believe that the spirit transits to the mountain, Kunlun Mountains, before going to heaven. So in a way, this point is helping the spirit to do the transition. You'll never find it in textbooks about helping dying people. I've used it quite a bit, and it's relaxing people, because there is this fear and anxiety before death, which is inevitable. And if you can help it along, giving people that soothing thing, it's okay. This is just a passage. It's like going to sleep. Just let go. It helps a lot. Triple warmer 5 combined with large intestine 4 is a simple jet lag treatment. There are many jet lag recipes which are more complicated. This one I find is the simplest, because today people are traveling so much. In the old days, I remember we used to needle points every 2 hours in the airplane to adjust to the place we were going to. It was so weird. People were looking. So, some of the points are a bit, fortunately they were all distal points, but still. They find you a bit weird in the airplane. Now, when you arrive somewhere, just these 2 points help adapt to the new place. Okay, the Chow channels. The Chow are my favorite channels. When Machocha did a course on the extraordinary channels, a 2-day course, he spoke 1.5 days on Chongmei. Comes Saturday, Sunday, comes lunchtime Sunday. I say, Giovanni, what about the others? No problem. So in the afternoon, he did the others. He did Ren, Du, and the Wei channels. And it got to 4:30. He had to go to the airport, take a plane. And he said, the Chow are not important. Bye. Now, they are my favorite. The Chow, both Yin and Yang Chow end at bladder 1. They are super important in regulating our relation to the sun, to light. And obviously, to regulate the brain's production of melatonin and regulating our body to the daylight and nighttime. Besides that, the Chow are also responsible for this aging process. They are the last ones to establish the rhythms. We say Yin Chow brings yin to the eye, and it's about how I see myself. And with that comes self-acceptance, rooted in who we are, or the opposite, lack of acceptance of who we are. I call it the Michael Jackson syndrome. Have you seen films of Michael Jackson when he was younger? He was a beautiful guy. What a sickness he had to go and change himself into some monster. His color, his hair, his nose, his everything. He was handsome, he was beautiful, I don't know, but he didn't see himself. So this is a question for you. If you ask somebody, if you could choose anyone, who would you choose to be? And if they answer anything except myself, they have an issue with Yin Chow. So here, sleep problems we'll talk about tomorrow. Now, an interesting point, self-acceptance, liver 8 is given, and self-trust, kidney 8. Kidney 8 gives you self-confidence and self-trust. Obviously, bladder 43, also self-acceptance and self-love. I don't know if you've noticed, if you take this room and you palpate the back points on all of us, I would say 3/4 of people, the most reactive point will be bladder 43. Except if you have a particular pathology or some problem with a lower back or something. But normally, because I've done it in classrooms, you know, when students are palpating, bladder 43 is reactive in most of us. Why? Because I think most of us have an issue with self-acceptance and self-love. We always need outside praise or outside acceptance, and we cannot just be. And if we are, then fabulous. Okay. I've been told we have only a few seconds left. So Yang Chow, they say takes, the Yang is taking Yang away from the eye. So it's related to how we see the world. Yin Chow, how I see myself, Yang Chow, how I see the world. You know you have a Yang Chow issue if you are criticizing how the world is today. Let's not get into this issue. who would have been better president? Who would have been prime minister? Who would have this, that? Okay, if you are disgusted by how much plastic we have put in the sea, how much this, how much that, the global warming, that we are not doing anything, if you go in the street and demonstrate, you have a problem with Yang Chow. Sorry?
Or else you're saying.
Yeah, exactly. So some extra points about special points that I've given. I just want to, okay. You want to take this one? Okay. Good? Okay, I just want to give you one example. We mentioned that the Chow and the Wei are regulating life transitions. And therefore, we also not only psychological transitions, but we also have physical transformations. And it's very interesting. This comes, the first part comes from the French school. They see that pathologies, recurring pathologies of the ankle or feet, might be that the person had difficulty going through the transition of life, standing on their own feet. We call it the gait of childhood. The hip, obviously, is the gait of adolescence, sexual transformation, and so on. And the shoulders are the gait of maturity. It's interesting, this concept. One of the challenges we have is shoulder periarthritis. And acupuncture works marvels, especially people who, for example, you have this carpenter or you have a house painter who develops a periarthritis with the shoulder. You give them 2-3 sessions, it's gone easy. And then you have this office worker man or somebody retired person comes and they have this periarthritis, and you treat, and nothing happens. Why? Because it's not a traumatic event. It's not a simple blood and cheese stagnation. There's something behind it. So now when I have a person, you ask a few questions, what do you do, what is your job? Well, an office worker, there's no reason for him to hurt his shoulder. You palpate small intestine 9. It's the meeting point of the Yang Chow and Yang Wei. If that point is very painful, which is here in the back, normally we always palpate large intestine, 15, 111, 14, the classical points. Forget that. Start with this. If that point is painful, the next point I'm palpating is the she cleft points, bladder 59 and gallbladder 35. She cleft of Yang Chow and Yang Wei. If those points are reactive, what do I treat the reactive point? For example, I might do a bladder 62 with a small intestine 11. Has nothing, no book is saying it for shoulder pain. But this is a key how we use the system and then of course hip gait, gallbladder 29, which is not, gallbladder 30 is always given for the hip. Palpate gallbladder 39, sometimes you find this one is much more sensitive. Next step, identify which of the Chow or Wei is involved. Is Yang Wei or Yang Chow? And then you can always ask some psychological questions to see, to confirm your suspicion. But the key treatment is this. Based on this, I said, okay, if we have 3 physical transformations, we must have 4 more psychological transformations. Because man is not just about getting old and dying, man is also about evolving. So I started exploring the crossings of Yang Chow and Yang Wei on the head. Because yin channels don't go to the head, obviously. And I came up, this is my own proposition. You do what you want with it, but I found that this gallbladder 20 and Dumay 16 are wind points to start changing our beliefs, to help change our beliefs. Bladder 1, gallbladder 14, and yin tang are change of vision. We're talking about belief systems, so that's the proposal. Gallbladder 13, which is the Benshen, with Dumay 24, it's letting go of fixed ideas. And finally, gallbladder 18, together with Dumay 20, this is a link point, by the way, is assuming our responsibility in life. This is a proposal. I mean, you know, we have some younger generation acupuncturists here. Welcome to dig in there and see if you actually manage to make some sense of this. It's a concept. I haven't really, in this sense, I've used it a bit, but not in this context, so it will be good. You asked about the sources. This is the acupuncture point and channel energetics, bridging the gap. A lot of the information that I was giving you is in this book. This is a hardcover in 2-color. It's a very nice book, available through Keener. I think I was hoping they had it here. I'm not sure if they do. No. They don't? Okay. I'm re-editing it. It's going to be maybe a couple of months in black and white. I'm trying to make a more accessible edition on Amazon. So if you're not in a hurry. Otherwise, order through Keener. I find it a very, very useful book, and not because I wrote it. So Chinese Medicine Revisited, it's available here. It's a book which actually explores all of the theories of Chinese medicine, re-explained in a Western manner. Because one of the difficulties we have with Chinese medicine, and most of us here are old-timers, so it's okay, we have accepted and swallowed all this. But when I was a student, there was a lot of these things would stick in my throat sideways. They wouldn't go down. They were not logical in a Western logic. So I've tried to allay that. And so this is the book, Point Energetics, Bridging the Gap. There are over 400 illustrations, all done by the author. And this is the Chinese Medicine Revisited. And this is the last one, which Singing Dragon has published. It's available. Yes?
Can you talk a little bit about your ordering of needles, the size, how long, etc.?
Ordering of?
The points.
Oh, in my way of doing extraordinary channels, I try to do one. I'm an adept of less is better. So less needles is better. Always start with the key opening point of the primary channel. Ask yourself, is the complementary necessary? I don't do it systematically. Only if there are symptoms which warrant using it. And then, if necessary, starting point. If necessary, passage points. For example, if you're doing Chong, maybe I do spleen 4. If I'm treating, for example, panic attacks, oppression, etc., I will add pericard 6. And if I'm treating, for example, counterflow chi or herniation or ptosis, always I add Dumay 20, which is not really a point of Chong, but it's part of the concept. And then maybe passage points. Specific passage point on the stomach channel, kidney channel, etc. And then dominant side, very debatable. Because some say, oh, systematically men on the left. It's been debated. Miriam Lee says, yeah, if you're treating before noon or afternoon. Some say depending on the direction of the channel. I go for the 4 channels that have chi cleft points. I go with a sensitive chi cleft. If, for example, kidney 9 is painful on one side, I do yin wei on that side. Needling. Needling, basically, we say circular needles for when you deal with Jing. Actually, in the re-edition of the channel book, I'm adding a whole chapter on needling. because we have different needling techniques, and they say that circular techniques for water or for jing.
Which of your books deals with what we've been talking about today, with the eight extraordinary meridians?
They're bridging the gap. I mentioned them also in the Chinese Medicine Revisited. There's a whole chapter on the extraordinary, but bridging the gap is, I have given some clinical examples and so on.
With complex cases where perhaps there's more than one extraordinary
Oh, yes.
do you have an order? Do you have an order?
Yeah, she's asking about complex cases where several extraordinary. Always we say constitutional therapy, Chong. We start with Chong. And then you have to make adapt your, and sometimes, also my advice, don't treat them too often. Once a week, maximum, and not more. Some people are using, for example, I've seen in, for common cold, the triple warmer 5 is given to reinforce the surface, and then you do it every day. No, triple warmer 5, I don't use it in a common cold. I use it for people who have recurrent colds to reinforce as an extraordinary channel. Otherwise, we have enough points to use that we leave the extraordinary alone. Okay? Thank you.